Okay, so this is going to be a full edit of a pano, including the HDR portions. So these are the raw images. So I will process these in Aurora HDR. So I open Aurora HDR. And I'm going to do a batch operation. So I do batch processing on single images because they're not HDR stacks. Go back to ACDSee, take these 3 images and open them up in Aurora. And then the settings I want to use is the HDR look. I'm going to use the user, and I have a preset that I created called Utah Pano. I want the file names to be suffixed with an SHDR because single image. And then the place that I want to put them is in the photo editing. This is a road trip, panos, and this is the 21 directory. And then I'll kick that off and we'll let them process. This will take several minutes. Okay, that actually took about a minute and 15 seconds or so. I sped it up for the video. Okay, so we're done with Aurora, and the output are these 3 TIFF files. And so now what I'm going to do now is select the 3 and then bring them into PTGui. Now I have a keyboard shortcut set to do this, but I'm just gonna I'll just use my shortcut. I have that tied to the toolbox. So open up PTGui. We'll align the images and then set the extent of the panoramic. I don't want to fill in any of the I've already done this previously, so these are set to where I want them. And you'll notice I have the fill holes is off. I always have that off by default. Okay, so let's create the pano. I want to deposit it in the 21 directory. I'm going to do a 16-bit TIFF with LZW compression. So let's do that. This is very fast. Okay, I don't need to save the project. I didn't really do too much in here. And there's the resultant image. Let's view it in ACDSee. So there's the image. It looks pretty good. We're going to enhance it a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to open this up. And this time we're going to use the Nik Color Efex. And I again have a keyboard shortcut for that in the toolbox. So let's open this one up in Nik Color Efex. And I'm going to do a couple of my favorites. Clear View, which is kind of a dehazer. And I'm going to set this to, let's kind of crank this up a little bit, 21%. We could look at the before and after. There's a slight change. There's a slight bit of darkening of the sky by that filter. I also like to use the contrast color range filter. That's far too bright, and it's not really the right color that we want to use. So I'm going to adjust the color itself. Let's go moving the color. This is starting to get into a decent looking color there. Let's go to 99. That's the hue angle. And then the color contrast, there's a little too much contrast there. So let's, and this is subjective, of course, subjective. Let's move this down to about, I don't know, right around in here, around 43%. And the brightness, it looks a little washed out, a little bright. So let's reduce that a little bit. Okay. And then one other thing that's kind of nice to do is there is some foliage here. So let's look at the foliage. So we click the plus to add, and then let's use the different method. There's 3 methods. Let's use the 2 method, and that looks a little strong. Let's reduce that a little bit. Move that down somewhere in the 30s, maybe around 34. Okay, so let's look at the before and after. There's slight changes. And here's them side by side. The top one is the original. The bottom one is the one that we're gonna use. So let's go back to the click on compare, and we're gonna export this as a TIFF. That exports it as a TIFF file. Let's close this. We're gonna close without saving. We actually did save it. And there's the new file. And now what we can do is we can compare the file corrected coming straight out of PTGui, and then the one that we just edited. So we're going to use the ACDSee compare tool, and now we see them side by side. Let's zoom in a little bit. I did not do any kind of sharpening, but you can see that increasing the contrast has an effect of almost sharpening. You can see this looks a little washed out, and you can see a little bit more detail in there. And that's about it.